We're here to talk about Punch,
Yeah.
which is releasing in the US and the UK. This got it was its premiere at Fright Fest last
Yeah.
year. It's like a sort of British folk horror slasher, kind of. I think is kind of a one way to describe it. There don't really seem to be many British slashers. What was it about that particular sort of subgenre that made you go, it's time. It's time that we had our own.
I mean, that was exactly my thinking. I love a slasher movie, but we don't have any. We don't have a Freddy or Jason or whoever. We don't even have Art the Clown, who's the new guy on the block. We don't have anybody. So I wanted to create one, and I came up with lots of dreadful ideas. He'd like wear a Union Jack outfit or something, like a Spice Girl, to try and find out, what it could be. And it was only when I kind of came up with the setting of the seaside town, which was a sort of separate idea I had, that I wanted to set something in this kind of seaside town in winter and get that melancholy vibe. And I put the two together, a slasher in a seaside town, and then I was like, oh, Mr. Punch. Has anyone done him? And there's been killer puppet movies, but no mask Punch. Um, so I kind of wrote it as quickly as possible and tried to get it made as quickly as possible. So, oh, this could be something good here.
Like you say, a slasher is kind of defined in many ways by its choice of killer, its choice of mask. So, when you could just talk, a little bit through the thought process of first using this kind of like British institution of Mr. Punch as the bad guy and how you guys went around making him so terrifying.
Well, I mean, it's not a huge leap because whilst he is, children's entertainment, the Punch and Judy show, the show is, he's a wife beater. He beats his child, he beats the police. So the violence is inherent in there. And I think a lot of people find it quite creepy as well. The appearance of him with the sort of nose and its voice as well. It's not a pleasant. There's nothing pleasant about Mr. Punch. So it wasn't a huge stretch to turn him into a villain. Um, and as for the mask, I drew the mask, a picture of kind of what I roughly wanted it to look like. Sent it to a company in Ireland called Rubber Johnnies, and they make latex masks. And they'll have a shout out, I'm sure. And we kind of designed it and came up with the thing together. So it's bespoke mask. Um, which so if we ever want to do a sequel, which we do, then we own the mask, we own the rights to that. That was our design.
It does sound strange because there are still like Punch and Judy shows, going on around, fairs, seasides. And that. I mean, what does it say about Britain that, this is kind of like our main sort of hand-me-down from generation to generation? They always are learning this story of, you say, this like reprehensible character who, beats his wife.
Um, I mean, it's a very interesting sort of story how Mr. Punch came over because he's originally an Italian character. He was called Punchinello, and I think it was the 17th century. It kind of came over here, um, and it was more of an adult entertainment because there is no set story. There's a bunch of set characters,
Mm.
but people would use it to kind of satirize politicians and important figures of the day. So it was more of a sort of an adult show. And then over the years, adult entertainment changed. So this, became just for kids. Um, I mean, I remember seeing one when I was young, I don't know, 5 or 6 or something. Um, and it's kind of weird. It's funny because people are hitting each other and kids love people hitting each other. It's slapstick, but there's everybody's face is kind of grotesque. There's a crocodile. It's quite unsettling. I don't know. Maybe it's children's one of children's first ways into horror, if in a way. Um, so it wasn't too hard to take it to a horror scenario, and that's what it says about Britain. Um, Probably not anything good. Um, but I wanted Mr. Punch to kind of embody those qualities, the qualities that we maybe don't like so much about our country, the that kind of small-mindedness that you can get in some places, then things like domestic violence. He's domestic violence. He's kicking out at a pub at 11 o'clock in a small town. That's Mr. Punch, basically.
Mm, mm, yeah, and a lot of the film is sort of centered around this young girl who's trying to leave her small town, and the her her neighbors and the fellow townsfolk aren't particularly happy about this. Do you think that there is that stigma within small towns about those that do get to leave?
I mean, I think totally there is, and it's part of the sort of generational conflict nature of this film, but also slasher films in general. There's often a generational conflict because it's often teenagers, 20 somethings that are being murdered, but there'll be some kind of the crime that is causing them to be murdered will have been possibly something caused by the older generation. There's always some kind of generational kind of conflict going on. And I think, you know, there has been in this country for a while now, generational conflict from Brexit through to climate change through to all of these things. And I think, yeah, there are some people who resent, people trying to better themselves in some way. Um, and it's not necessarily the fault of people in these towns either. If circumstances were different and these towns had more going for them, then people would stay. You know, but kind of young people's flight to the big city obviously happens everywhere.
Yeah, and obviously, especially in this case, because it is it's a seaside town, which means that once summer is over, the town is essentially dead. What was it about that setting that intrigued you so much? You mentioned earlier that it was kind of laying over from another idea. What was it about winter seaside that really struck you as an interesting environment?
Um, I'm from as far away as from the seaside as it's possible to be. I'm from Birmingham, so I always viewed the seaside as a magical place. I'd go once a year to Weston-super-Mare or Torquay or something, and go to the arcades and the beach, and absolutely loved it. So it was always, this kind of special place that we went once a year. And then I did go once. I had a ex-girlfriend at university at a seaside town, and that's the first time I went in winter and saw everything closed, everything shut, the kind of windswept beach, all the closed shops. Um, and I thought, well, this is kind of spooky.
Mhm.
It's almost like, when you go into a building that's normally full of people,
Yeah.
and then you go in after hours, like to your school when you're a child, and you go in like after it's closed. There's something quite weird and unsettling about this place that's normally full of people. So it's almost that, I guess. And so yeah, and so that atmosphere, I wanted to kind of capture the atmosphere of that vibe. And it's not set in any particular place. We shot it a lot in Hastings, but some in Clacton on Sea. Um, and they're both places which have some rougher areas, but they have some really nice places as well. But we just pointed the camera at the less salubrious places, to just kind of create this sort of hybrid town that has been forgotten. Because some seaside towns are reinventing themselves now. You see what's happened at Margate and places like that. So there's definitely life still to be had in those places, but some have yet to kind of discover how to reinvent themselves, I guess.
And I guess whilst the idea of, seaside, winter, it's great on the page and on the screen for creating atmosphere, I'm guessing not so much fun in practicality of filming at night.
Um, yeah, the film kind of takes place over day and night, so there's a lot of night shoots. Um, and yes, we shot in March, which March in the UK, you can get kind of six different weathers in a day. And so in the daytime, it was actually quite sunny when we were shooting in Hastings, and some of the crew were in shorts. But then we did 2 days on the beach, um, overnight on the beach, and that was cold. It started snowing. Um, yeah, that was pretty horrific.
Yeah, and kudos to the cast and the crew because it's it works on screen, but just sort of thinking, hang on a minute, that must have been freezing.
Yeah, I mean, the one good thing that we did is, it was set in winter, so the cast could at least wear coats in the
Yes.
scenes. Whereas, yes, if I'd set it in the summer and they'll be like, right, you're all in swimwear and you all gotta pretend it's warm, yeah, we might have had even more issues. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I think because that's what like catalog shoots do, isn't it? It's like those poor like swimsuit models are actually like on a beach somewhere in the height of winter so that they can get it in the catalog for summer.
yeah, they
So
have to
yeah,
Photoshop the goosebumps out, don't they?
yeah, wrong. And you mentioned earlier that you're hoping for a punch too. Have you started to develop that idea? Do you have an idea of how it will all come back?
Yeah, I mean, part of the reasons for creating a slasher character is the sequel potential. Um, because as well as not really having a slasher killer here in the UK, we don't really do sequels very much. Um, Maybe this is to do with us having a sort of less commercial attitude than say they do in the US, where if a film's a hit there, even if it shouldn't have a sequel, they'll start making a sequel. But I wanted to do something that has sequel potential, so I've got it all planned out. Um, just have to hope that obviously this one does well. There's a lot riding on this one. Doing well enough to kind of warrant either critically or commercially a sequel happening. But I've got them all planned out. Um, I want to explore more of the mythology of the Punch character, how he came about, um, and then I want to take him to other locations.
Like space, yeah.
Uh,
It's got to be one in space, right?
yeah. By 10, I want him in space. So yeah, we can start taking him to the US. We can start taking him to Vegas, Thailand. All of these different locations. And then, but yeah, Punch X, Punch in space.
And it's not just Punch that's coming out. I think Midnight Peep Show is coming out in February in the US. I know that you had a hand in that. Can you talk us, a little bit through your segment? Because I remember seeing it at Fright Fest, and that was
Yeah.
one that kind of really stood out to me.
Oh, thank you. You didn't say stood out in a good or bad way.
No, I mean, I'm a big like Saw fan, and I kind of think it sort of like
Yeah.
it taps into that sort of spirit.
Yes. So Midnight Peep Show. It's a horror anthology that played at a Fright Fest 2 years ago. That is finally coming out now. Um, so there's three sections. There's one by me, one by Jake West, who horror fans should know, one by a guy called Errol Anthony Hales, who did Werewolf Santa, and a girl called Ludovica Musumeci. She directed the wraparound narrative section of the film. So there's four directors on it. I direct a section in the middle called Fuck, Marry, Kill, which is a sort of um, Saw inspired game show. So, if you know the sort of party game Fuck, Marry, Kill, where you have to decide which person you want to fuck, who you want to marry, who you want to kill. It's that game, but played out in a kind of Saw style setting. Um, and yeah, lots of fun. And so yeah, hopefully that should be coming out. I think it's coming out in the US on Valentine's Day, um, which is with the film is actually set on Valentine's Day, the kind of wraparound section. So it's meant to be a sort of anti-Valentine's Day movie. So if you don't want to watch a rom-com, you can watch this kind of film that's all about different stories about relationship breakdowns, basically relationships that have gone wrong in a horror sort of a way.
Yeah, some of them have definitely gone very wrong. And you mentioned just then, last year Punch was there, a couple of years ago, Midnight Peep Show. You've had, stuff that you've written play at Fright Fest. the 25th anniversary this year. Have you got anything that you're hoping that they might screen, be it a full feature or a tease in some way?
Well, I am shooting something hopefully in March. Whether it will be finished in time for August, I don't know. But yes, so I'm in pre-production on something at the moment, top secret that I can't talk about just yet. But yeah, obviously I'd love to have something there. Um, and it's not been announced yet, but there might be something at Glasgow as well in a month or so.
Cool. Well, I wish you best of luck with the release of Punch. I keep my fingers crossed for Punch 2. And I'm sure that we'll cross paths at Fright Fest, be it with a film or otherwise.
Definitely.